Tom Nelson is one of the most powerful and influential lawyers in the USA. People call him the Pharaoh, or the King of Law. 20 years ago, his father-in-law, who was a priest, urged Tom to become more serious about Christianity. As a result, Tom became more interested in religions. And when he read the Quran, the truth struck him hard. He believed in Islam, and later, he openly said the Shahada. Now, Tom defends Muslims in complicated court cases. He saved his attorney Muslim friend, Mr. Brandon Mayfield, from the death sentence after the FBI jailed him and mistakenly linked him to the Madrid train bombings. Tom Nelson sued the FBI. As a result, the U.S. government has agreed to pay $2 million to Mr. Brandon Mayfield and issued a written apology to him. Mr. Tom Nelson says Islam is his final journey. His faith remains unshakable, living in contentment, with total submission to the Almighty, the One Creator.
I started reading the Quran, partly in response to the pressure from my father-in-law to become serious about Christianity, Trinitarianism. And so he's actually the person who raised the issue, and I ultimately ended up reading the Quran very carefully, and it hit me as true and something I should pursue, and so I have, and I did. And as I say, the rest is history. I've been practicing for about 15 years, perhaps longer. It's not, it's hard. You can tell when you did your Shahada, but it's really what's in the heart that determines when you're a Muslim. It isn't necessarily saying something in front of a crowd that makes you a Muslim. It's the internal statement. And that was at least 15 years ago. And so that's how I happened to become a Muslim. And then I got to know a number of people in Portland who Muslims, and talked to them about it, and I became more and more active. But it wasn't much of an issue for a long time until really 9/11 happened. And so I then got a lot of requests from a lot of people I hadn't known before who wanted to know legally what Muslims should do when faced with issues like when the FBI knocks on your door, how do you deal with them? And so I started consulting and counseling those people, all on a pro bono, meaning free basis, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. I really became active in the government's, quote, war on terror, which is really, in my opinion, a war on Islam. In 2004, when a local Oregon attorney, Portland attorney by the name of Brandon Mayfield, who himself was a Muslim, and whom I had known for a number of years, I'd counseled him in becoming a lawyer, because I was about 20 years senior to him, got arrested for being involved in the Spanish train bombing of, what was it, spring of 2004, I'm not sure what month. The upshot of that was the FBI had, after totally claiming to the world that Mr. Mayfield was guilty, the Spanish authorities proved conclusively that the link between the bombing and Mr. Mayfield was fabricated and wrong. It was a false reading of a fingerprint, and Mr. Mayfield was freed.
Tom never gave up hope because of the FBI false allegations. He proved that Mr. Mayfield is innocent. Muslims were overwhelmed with joy and happiness.
Well, during the course of my representation of Mr. Mayfield, I got some national notoriety, the national press turned to me to respond to questions they had about Mr. Mayfield, because I had been his criminal attorney, and I still am, to some one degree or another, his civil attorney. So I accommodated them and responded and got on the national networks, Keith Olbermann and all the usual suspects, liberal media. And at that point, several attorneys in Washington, D.C. saw me talking about defending Muslims in Oregon, and they had a problem with the government in relation to Al Haramain Islamic Foundation, which was a charity down in southern Oregon that had been raided and ultimately designated by the U.S. government, and two of its directors indicted. And I got involved in that case, and that's where it really began. So it's been kind of a evolving story. The question is, what's the difference between Christianity and Islam? And it boils down primarily to the oneness of God versus the Trinitarian approach. In addition, of course, Islam has a lot of, it has the Quran as the last revelation of God, and it provides instruction, guidance, and those sorts of things. But Islam is really an extension of both Judaism and Christianity, except that it got back on the Unitarian nature of God, the oneness of God. God has no partners. God has no equals. After the Christians went off onto that tangent 4 centuries after Jesus died, it's important to remember that the early Christians didn't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. It was debated. If you read the Bible pretty carefully, he said he is the Son of Man, not the Son of God. At least many references in the Bible. But later theologians took the idea and made him into the Son of God. Other differences include organizational structure. Many churches, certainly the Catholic Church and even a lot of Protestant churches have a very hierarchical structure, whereas Islam generally doesn't.
Why did you decide to live in the mountain?
Because I like it up here. Compared to living in a city, it's quiet, it's restful, you can think about a lot of very important things. You don't have any noise, I have no neighbors, and I figured rather than living somewhere I didn't want to be or didn't enjoy, I'd rather live here. What I'm doing now is, it's early September, I'm getting ready for winter. And if you look down there, you'll see a woodshed full of wood. The wood that's not in the shed outside there is the wood that I gathered yesterday. And I'm going to have to chop it up in a week or two, and that's great exercise.
His great status as an attorney would not stop him to engage in all aspects of country living, including fixing many things with his own hands.
Now let's see if I can shave with it. Not quite, but close. Close enough. Now I'm going to go test it and see how good it really is on the wood. The reason I came here was to put an edge on that, so see if I can't chop the wood a little bit better than what I had been doing. MashaAllah, working great. Yeah, that's the way it ought to be. A friend of mine who works on Palestinian matters is going to get and fly a plane into Gaza to deliver humanitarian supplies instead of trying to go by boat.
How do you feel about that?
I'm in favor of it. I just don't think I want to be on the plane. It's going to be dangerous.